Yechezkel, Perek Tet, again, page 1222. So, if you remember where we left off our heroes last week, so Yechezkel, we compared chapter 8 with chapter 4 of Devarim, and the four different types of avodah zarah, the four different types of idolatry that exist in chapter 8, three of which are highlighted in chapter 4 of Deuteronomy, with the result being exile. Right, that's the kind of the upshot of this avodah zarah. We pointed out also one of the things that we need to be mindful of is we noted that the first Beit Mikdash, we were told, is destroyed because of the big three: avodah zarah, gilui arayot, and shfichut damim. And right, so idolatry, idol worship, and adultery. We've charted through Malachim, through Kings, as well as the beginning of Yechezkel, a lot of instances of avodah zarah. We've also noted, I think David pointed this out at some point, David Goldmeyer, that often avodah zarah comes with little bits of the other two, little bits of, right, like Molech, you have built-in killing of children, and there's certain idols that may have adultery built in as well, like the Midianite women when they came with their adultery in the story of Bilam and Balak. So it's possible. But this chapter we're going to get at least a short talk about murder being introduced as well. So we're going to get a little bit more of the result of the idolatry being the exile, which we saw in Deuteronomy. We're going to see right away in this chapter. And also we're going to have a couple of our themes that we've been building kind of highlighted to some extent in this chapter. So it's a short chapter, but there's a lot to unpack. So Perek Tet. So the very last pasuk of Perek Chet, just to go back for 1 second also, is that the Jewish people are going to call out, and I am not going to be merciful. Right? Mm-hmm. So the first verse of Perek Tet is Vayikra be'oznai kol gadol lemor, and into my ears, Yechezkel speaking, right, a great sound comes into my ears. Karvu pikudot ha'ir v'ish kli mashchito biyado. So the people who are appointed over the city, i.e. to destroy the city, says Rashi, right, the people who are appointed to destroy the city, right, are all coming with their, right, their tools of destruction there. So Yechezkel is hearing, right, this great sound saying that the end is coming, and it's not a cry, but it's almost like you have the cry of the Jewish people juxtaposed to this great call for destruction from God towards these, right, the appointees to destroy Jerusalem, which is a really, really interesting juxtaposition of they're going to cry out, not going to hear them, and then this loud call to arms, call to destruction. V'hinei shisha nashim ba'im miderech shar ha'elyon asher mafnet tzvona v'ish kli mafatzo biado v'ish echad b'tocham levush badim v'keses hasofer b'masnav v'yavo v'yamdu eitzel mizbeach nechoshes. So this is a very important pasuk. There are 6 anashim. So the big debate here between the Radak and some of the other Mefarshim. The Radak says that there's 6 in 1. So there's a debate here whether it's 6 and one of them is this guy holding the inkwell, or if it's, right, one's described his clothing and everything else, or is it 6 people holding the klei mashchis, holding the weapons, and one additional fellow, right, holding the inkwell to kind of, at face value, you'd think to keep track of what the whole destruction, kind of like a Josephus type, right, to write down what's actually happening. So we'll see what his role is in a couple minutes. It's not quite that, but that's, I think, your initial impression. So you have these 6 or 7 people. Now they're called anashim, which basically, like, every time anashim are mentioned in Tanakh, there's this debate: are they angels or are they people? Right? I feel like it's like everywhere this debate. So the Radak says these are 7 appointees of Babylon. These are actually Babylonian people who were appointed by whoever they were appointed by, meaning the big guy upstairs appointed them, but they are appointees from Babel, right, where their rulership are appointing them to come to, right, engage in the destruction. And the Radak says, if you look in Yirmiyahu, you can see these. So I tried finding it, and I couldn't find in any of my notes where in Yirmiyahu. So if anyone can let me know where that might be, that would be very helpful. But apparently, perhaps this is referring to these people who come from Bavel. He gives names also in the Radak. The Radak kind of goes through a whole bunch of names. They don't mean anything to me. I don't think they mean anything to you either. But he goes through who they might be. He says, "Shenemar b'sefer Yirmiyahu v'hem Gargal Shratzar Shamgar Nivo Sar Sachim Rav Saris," etc. So the other prevailing opinion, which we're going to elaborate on a little bit, is that these are angels. And as we said, we're still a couple of years out of the destruction of the temple. So Yechezkel is describing something he's seeing here. Now again, it could just be something that he's seeing in some sort of prophetic trance, but because of the visceral imaging, what he's describing, so there's an inclination to say that he's actually seeing something happening. So the approach that a lot of these Parshanim take is to highlight a line in Rashi from Tehillim. So if you jump to Tehillim, Kuf Chaf Gimel. Page 15. 51. 15, 50, 51. Oh, no. One page back. Kufchaf base, sorry about that. So, Omdos hayur raglinu b'sharayach Yerushalayim Yerushalayim habenuya ki ir shechubra la yachtav. Right, so this is a song, which is why it's famous. Right, so, right, our feet stood firm within our gates of Jerusalem. The built-up Jerusalem is like a city that is united together. So most people talking about Yerushalayim united together will talk about, if they want to get all political, they'll talk about how Yerushalayim is the center of so many different religions. If they want to talk about, from Jewish perspective, it's the place where all Jews of all stripes gravitate together, right? Think about the Kotel Wall and how, other than certain factions which create a lot of strife, generally speaking, it's a place where all different types of Jews can come to worship God. Those are the type of tropes you normally hear. There's a view, though, in Chazal that when it's Yerushalayim Ir Shechubra La Yachdav, it's not about the people, but it's actually a city that in and of itself is mechubar to a second city, which is Yerushalayim Shel Ma'ala. That there's Yerushalayim Shel Mata, there's this lower Jerusalem that we see, and then there's some sort of godly realm where there's this upwards Yerushalayim. And there's an interesting Rashi in Sukkah, where Rashi says that the third Beit HaMikdash is going to come down from heaven. It's kind of going to be like a mic drop, or Beit HaMikdash drop. But so that's kind of the image that Rashi conveys. If I remember correctly, I think it's Mem Aleph, that Rashi somewhere around there. So this notion of there being this upper Jerusalem and lower Jerusalem, so some of the modern Parshanim, their approach to explaining what Yechezkel is seeing is he's seeing these angels acting upon this upper Jerusalem, which is all the more to highlight one of the points that we've made, which is that even when the Babylonians eventually come and destroy the Beit HaMikdash, it was just sticks and stones because ultimately the destruction had already taken place, right? And so that's kind of what is being conveyed here in Yechezkel. So back to Tet. Now, just a quick question. So why is this? Why are these fellows stopping by the Mizbeach Nechoshes? Any thoughts? V'yamdu Eitzel Mizbeach Nechoshes, based off of last week. So if you remember, the last form of Avodah Zarah was if you look at pasuk Tez Zayin, right above and in Perek Chet. So vayavo oti el chatzer beit Hashem hapnimit v'nei petach heichal. So you're standing right now in that spot between the mizbeach hanechoshes, the big outer mizbeach, and the steps going into the kodesh, which is where the Kohen Gadol would lean on the cow, right, on Yom Kippur, that spot right there, right? So they're standing there, and what are they doing? Instead of facing and worshiping God, they're bowing down to the shemesh. They're bowing down to the heavenly, right, bodies. So this is kind of like a direct affront to God happening right there, and so these people who appointed to destroy the Beit HaMikdash, they come and they stand right next to the Mizbeach HaNechoshes. Uchvod Elokei Yisrael na'aleh me'al keruv asher haya alav el miftan habayit vayikra el ha'ish halavush badim asher keses hasofer b'masnav. So at this point, right, they're standing here, and at this point God basically ascends further. This, right, whatever, this is kind of like, again, a throwback to that very beginning of the book, where there's this imagery of God on the chariot. So here again we have, right, the God of glory ascending from where God's Shekhinah normally rests, at the top of the Kruvim, top of the cherubs, those little angelic figures, whatever they were. They probably weren't babies, but whatever they were, those angelic figures over the Aaron. And then he basically calls out the man with the scribe of the 6 or 7 people or angels that are there. So he calls the man with the scribe, the man with the quill, and fine. So moving forward, Vayomer Hashem Elav Avor betoch ha'ir betoch Yerushalayim v'hitvita tav al matzchot anashim hane'enachim v'ane'nakim al kol toivot hana'asot betocha. So he says to you, and we know what his role was, I want you to go amongst the city, and I want you to draw a tav, literally the letter tav, right, on the foreheads of the people who groaned and were saddened by all of the abominations that were done in the temple. In other words, right, and this is a very important theme of Yechezkel, right, what do you get punished for? What you do. Not what your father did, not what somebody else did, right? You only get punished for what you do. That's Yechezkel's contention in his book, right? And many times we talked already about that theme when it came up the first time in this book, right? He's very clear, you get punished for what you do. And therefore, if you were amongst the minority who were upset about what was happening in the temple, then you deserve a pass. So, this person or whatever or angelic figure, and this is why, right, this is why they're more inclined to call these people angels, because these jobs are not normally given in the hands of man.
I don't see where it says that's a tav, but I have a hunch it's something to do with Yeshiva, maybe.
So the tav is, so there's a Gemara in, where's the Gemara? The Gemara is, here we go, in Shabbos Nun Hey. So the Gemara in Shabbos Nun Hey asks, Maishna Tav. So Rav says that the Tavs, some of them said Tichayeh and some of them said Tamut. So basically everyone got a Tav, but only the ones who were to live, right, got a Tichayeh, and the ones who were supposed to die got a Tamut on their heads. And Shmuel says Tamaz Zechut Avot or Tachun Zechut Avot, which means either right, which is, this one's really interesting with the overlay of what we just talked about within, right, the book of Yechezkel, right? But Shmuel says that it's your, right, the merit of your forefathers has ended or has been used up, or that you still have more, basically. So, which is a really interesting thing to have in context of Yechezkel, where we've tried to focus on the fact that for Yechezkel, the whole idea of Zechut Avot is put in question. But Shmuel still seems to think that's what the sign was. So personally, Rav makes more sense in the way that we've been explaining the book. Shmuel, we have some questions about. So you have this scribe going around, and we'll have to talk about this in a second, because we're going to see in a second Yechezkel's reaction to what's going on and trying to figure out exactly how to read it. But we'll get there in a second. So, Pasuk Ha'il Eila Amar Ba'oznai Ivru Ba'ir V'acharav V'haku Al Tachos Enichem V'al Tachmolu. So again, he tells them, go and destroy, right, the people of the city, and don't have any mercy. Zakein Bachor Ubsula V'taf V'nashim Ta'argu L'mashchis V'al Kol Ish Asher Alav Hatav Al Tigashu V'mikdashai Techelu V'yachelu B'anashim Hazakenim Asher Lifnei Habayit. Okay, so basically it's non-discriminate in terms of the stage of life. Only the people who, right, have the special protective tav should not be touched. Everybody else should basically be killed, and by doing so you will be defiling my mikdash. So God is almost commanding these angels to kill, right, all of the people who deserve to be killed based off of their actions, and by doing so, right, they are defiling the Beit HaMikdash. Their bodies will be defiling the Beit HaMikdash. So which is really like this is like an unprecedented clarity of God being the direct commander, right, causing the defilement of the Beit HaMikdash in this fashion. You don't have this anywhere else, where this direct of a commandment to do so.
Could the argument be made, though, that even though it looks like they're separating the righteous from the non, that they didn't do anything to stop the people from sinning?
What do you mean?
Because sometimes you blame people, because they were the actual sinners, but sometimes you blame the others because they didn't do anything to stop the people from
100%. That's possible. That certainly is possible, and that might be the Zakinim. The Zakinim here are not. It's not clear who exactly the Zakinim here are. So the simplest answer, I think, is, right, we saw in the last chapter as well that one of the stages of Avodah Zarah highlighted a particular person. What was his name? Shaphan? Yeah, Shaphan, Yaazanyahu ben Shaphan, and the Shivim Ziknei Yisrael, Pasuk Yud Aleph. Right? So they were amongst the people, not only not telling the Jews not to worship those images on the walls, but were actually front and center in the actual worship. So having those Zakinim, and we said then that those are the Zakinim who were sitting in the Sanhedrin at that time. So you have, right, these elders literally being, right, their bodies are being killed in the Beit HaMikdash as a defilement of the Beit HaMikdash. And it's kind of, it's a terrible image, but also one that has this notion of you get what you sow. Meaning what you started the ball rolling this way, and you're going to pay the consequences for it. So, Vayomer Aleihem Tamu et Habayit, right? The house has become impure. Umal'u et hachatzirot halalim, and the courtyard is filled with bodies. Se'u v'yatzu v'hiku ba'ir, and now go out and destroy the city. Vahi b'hakotam v'nei sha'ar ani v'apla al panai. So at this point, Yechezkel is witnessing all this, and he can't stand it. He can't stomach it. So he falls on his face, v'ezak, and he cries out, V'omar, Aha Adonai Elohim hamashchit ata et kol she'erit Yisrael b'shavchecha es chamasecha Yerushalayim. You're going to destroy the entire remnant of the Jewish people by letting out your anger against Yerushalayim. So a couple of interesting facts here. Number one, what do you mean all of the Jewish people? Didn't we say the people with the tavs aren't going to get killed? So there's some who actually say, right, no one deserved a tav. No one deserved a tchaya. So the guy goes out and he tries to find someone who groaned for what was happening in the temple, and he couldn't find anybody. So nobody survives, and that's what Yechezkel. The other perspective is, no, Yechezkel is just using hyperbole because he's in shock, and he's just so saddened by what he's seeing. The sight of all these people being killed doesn't mean literally everybody is killed, right? No, but really what he's trying to say is that so many people are being killed, it's almost like everybody's being destroyed. Which probably makes more sense with all the prophecies we saw building up to this, because we saw already earlier that there's going to be some people who are fleeing by the sword behind them, which means some sort of implication that there are some people who do manage to get out of the destruction. And I think historically some people do survive. So I think that's probably the better read, but some people read this as, right, if this is fact, right, prophetic fact, then how do you fit that in with everything else that we just saw? So there was an option if someone deserved to survive, and nobody deserved to survive. The other interesting thing is there's also this whole group of people in exile already, right? So it's almost like, right, Yechezkel here embodying the Jewish people, right, maintains that same, right, false narrative that hasn't been shifted over because the destruction hasn't yet occurred, right? It's happening, and this is the paradigm shift. This is when the shift takes place, where the remnant is not the Jews who are still in Israel, the remnant is the people who are already in Babel, right? But that, right, is an interesting language that he uses to, right, almost sounds like there's not going to be any remnant left, right? So it sounds like perhaps even Yechezkel has to have this paradigm shift, and, right, God conveying it to the leader in Babel to help him convey it to the people in Babel. This is where that serious shift really starts to take hold.
Can I ask just, so with the loss of the 10 tribes earlier, they were dispersed and assimilated and gone, never to be seen again. Is there any way to get a sense of whether the Israelites in Jerusalem thought of those who were already exiled as on their way out, disappearing, to be assimilated and to disappear much in the same way? So in terms of the center of gravity, those in Jerusalem, would they have looked at those in Babel and said, oh, well, they're basically already written off, so the only possible remnant would be in Judah?
So I think Yirmiyahu would be the place to look for those types of senses. But we do get that on the flip side from the people in exile. They feel that about themselves, right, in Yechezkel. And that's one of the challenges Yechezkel is going to have to face, is trying to convince the Jews otherwise, that you're not the next 10 tribes, right? You will survive in Galut. You are the remnant that will one day return. And that was a big paradigm shift for them as well, trying to not see themselves as the 10 lost tribes who assimilate into whatever culture they ended up in. Fine. Pasuk Tet. Vayomer Eli avon Beit Yisrael v'Yehuda gadol b'ma'od ma'od v'timalei ha'aretz damim. And here we finally get a reference not just to Avodah Zarah or to Hamas, which we pointed out as more social injustices that underlie the community at large. But now we talk about the land is filled with blood. Va'ir Mala'ah Mutesa, the Radak says on Damim that it was filled with Shrichas Damim, that there was murder going on as well, right? And that was right. People took the law into their own hands, and that was also a problem going on at this time. Vermela Muteh Ki Amru Azav Hashem Es Haaretz Ve'ein Hashem Ro'eh. Right, and the justification that was given for this behavior, right, which we've pointed out in a couple of the earlier chapters as well, right, whether God sees or doesn't see, right? I think even the previous chapter we had a whole talk about seeing versus not seeing, and right, the justification for doing evil because God doesn't see anyways, but right, the reality that this whole book is all about God seeing the whole picture. And right, God being aware of what's going on, and that the not seeing is your way of justifying terrible acts, but God sees and retribution is coming. V'gamani lo tachus einei v'lo echmol darkam v'rosham nasati. Right, I'm not going to have any compassion with them. I have placed their way upon their head. Right, they're getting what they deserve. V'nei ha'ish levush habadim Asher hakeses b'masnav meishiv davar lemor asisi ka'asher tzivisani. And right, it's kind of like this little bit foreboding ending of the chapter where the man with the quill, right, who was supposed to put the tav on everybody's head, right, finally comes back and says, I did what I had to do. So the next chapter is going to be like a further move of the chariot. So we're probably going to run through the chapter relatively quickly next week. We may even start chapter 11, but once we get through chapter 11, so then the book takes a little bit of a shift again. So the next two chapters are part of this ongoing conversation, and then we will shift. But we'll stop here. Any questions?
The guy in the linen, is there any reference that could have been the Kohen Gadol?
So,
referring to the white linen?
Yeah, so it's certainly possible. There certainly is, I think actually by Angel, my teacher, so he noted that there might be exactly that point, that there's right, to some extent it's possible. It's I didn't see anything else about it. He said it's possible that there's like this ironic twist happening where the man with the ink, in fact, it could be that all of them are dressed like Kohanim, right? And that there's this ironic, right, the service to God being done in the Beit HaMikdash in God's name is actually the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, which is like this ironic flipping on his head. I didn't really see much about it, so that's why I didn't really go down that path. But I'm pretty sure I saw that in my notes with Rabbi Angel, but I couldn't find where he called that from.
Yeah, if the theme of the Sefer is that each one is responsible for their own actions, didn't we see in Malachim that there was a point that it was too late, even though they did some level of tshuva?
Yeah, after Menashe, right? That the sins of Menashe were so bad that it didn't matter whether Yoshiyahu or anybody else tried to bring the Jews back. There was no chance for them to really come back. Now, part of that when we did that in Malachim was the question of when you set people up, right, to a point where, right, those sins are so ingrained, right, even when you have certain reformations, right, the reality of Menashe's influence was still there, right? The Reformation never really fully took hold, even afterwards. So you could argue, right, the way that you want, if you wanted to put that within the context of Yechezkel, which is a very extreme, by the way, right? I've noted a couple of times that the theology of Yechezkel, that you only get, right, punished for your sins and nothing else, right, is not the simple way of understanding most of the Torah's view of how this works, and we tried to address that at the Shabbos drasha, Shabbos Shuvah drasha. I think what I gave this past year. So I think I spoke about this. So the way that you would kind of reconcile the two would be to say that what Menashe did had such an influence that nobody really got out of it, but they were all really, in fact, deserving themselves because they never really were able to break out of it. That's the way that you would say it that would make the two jive. But yeah, you could also say the extreme way of Menashe was so bad, God said it's a fate of complete, the Beit HaMikdash will be destroyed, nothing you can do about it, even if you are completely righteous, which would cut against this notion. Thank you.
Thank you.